get more of it. And one of the easiest ways to get more of it is to understand more of the intelligence about what's happening with your revenue. Look, the more you can understand what's driving revenue and the intricacies of the money you're bringing into the business, the easier it is for you to find the ways to be able to make more of it. So today we're going to be diving in on how to level up your revenue intelligence that helps you maximize your revenue into profit and helps you make more revenue as well. So with us today is Rahul Shah. Now, he is the Chief Executive Officer of Next Quarter, and he has more than 15 years of experience as an accomplished CFO and COO. Now, he founded the company in 2016 and leads the overall corporate direction and strategy at Next Quarter. And he has an extensive background in financial planning, sales, analytics, and operational management as well. Now, prior to Next Quarter, Rahul served as the CFO for Global Industry Verticals, a DXSC technology company managing an $8 billion plus P&L. At CSC, he was also responsible for setting up a global COE for revenue and sales analytics. He's held other leadership positions at Covensis and Infosys and PwC as well, probably all of which I completely mispronounced. Rahul, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing?
It's a pleasure to be with you, Ty. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm excited you could be here because look, I mean, everybody that's listening and watching, this is what we care about, right? We care about bringing top end revenue in. We care about, keeping as much of it as profit as well. Look, let me ask you a question. As a CFO yourself, what is the one question that you think keeps CFOs awake every single night from your experience?
Yeah, great question, Ty. And, with the environment right now, the biggest questions that keep CFOs awake at night is, am I going to hit my revenue number? Am I going to hit the commitments that I give to the Wall Street or to your private investors? It's more important now than ever because the market is unpredictable, right? The economy is a little turbulent right now. So as a CFO, it's easy and there's a lot of control on the costs because the costs are either in a purchase order or they're moving on two legs and you can count the people. The thing that the CFOs are not able to get is a predictive real-time forecast of revenue. Because if you think of a CFO's role, it's to manage revenue, expectations to investors, and the profitability. And to understand the profitability, the first thing they need to understand is where is my revenue moving? And once they get that understanding, then they can see how they want to adjust the cost. So I believe that getting that real-time revenue intelligence or revenue forecast or an outlook is the most important things that are keeping CFOs awake at night today.
When it comes to higher revenue, what do you see? I mean, with all of your experience, you deal with analytics, you've got CFO experience, you've run very, very, very large businesses. So what are the factors to look into when you're really talking about driving higher revenues?
Yeah, so the factors to look into is it starts with, making sure it's always about people, process, and technology, right? So making sure from a revenue perspective, you have the right people, right? So a good example is if you don't have the sales quotas and the sales reps to drive those quotas, and you have a revenue plan, maybe that's not going to work out, right? So that's the first thing I would say is making sure you have the right quotas assigned out, your salespeople are doing the right thing. The second thing is the process, right? So how are these sales reps performing? How are my current customers doing? Am I getting the revenue I projected from these customers? So that's where I would say an end-to-end process, and especially when you think of the revenue function, right? A lot of it is today kind of siloed a little bit between what people call revenue operations or sales operations that sits in sales. And then the CFO's office has a function called financial planning. And there's that process and collaboration between the two teams. So you can start looking at that movement of revenue end to end from the start to the end is very important, right? And the third thing is technology, right? Do we have the right technology to enable the sales reps to have a seamless flow of information between that source of revenue from a sales or CRM system to the financial planning system? And that's kind of the three things that I would say make that up very well.
When there's analytics that we're looking at, and there's a lot of things to be able to look at, what information related to revenue, what KPIs per se should we be really looking at tracking?
Yeah, so I think that's a fantastic segue into revenue intelligence, right? So the sort of old world order was, hey, you look at your trending of your revenues and you apply some math based on what's happening macroeconomically, and you come up with your revenue forecast, right? So the new way of doing it is revenue intelligence. And what we mean by that is with the advent of AI and predictive analytics, how do we scan those conversations? How do we get the sentiment of what our salespeople are doing? How are they talking to their customers, right? When a deal is or an opportunity is in play, are we having the right conversations? And then I kind of address it in three broad buckets, right? Understanding what to sell, right? So right now with predictive analytics, we can do a lot of things for the sales teams where you can start understanding what is the true white space. And what I mean by that is, what are the areas of opportunity that I've not sold into my existing or new customers, and how can I sell them? And that's where technology can help you identify, we've sold certain deals to similar customers, and this is the product offering that resonates the most. That's kind of the first thing I would say. So the KPIs around that are really important to understand. Are we proactively identifying opportunities, right? The second KPI I would consider is the conversational intelligence, right? And what I mean by that is when I am selling into a particular customer, it's who am I selling into, right? So what do I sell? Who am I selling into? And the who I sell into is, there's a lot of data around, am I selling to the influencer or a budget owner? Ultimately, how do I reach the decision maker? So understanding from a KPI perspective for all your open deals, are you engaged with the right stakeholders at your customer? Is really important in my view, right? So the third KPI I would say is the forecast accuracy. So once you start putting the deals in the funnel, right, you want to start measuring, your reps or your managers gave you a forecast at the beginning of the quarter. How well did I actually end up at the end of the quarter compared to that first forecast? And that's the forecast accuracy. So those would be some of the key KPIs that I would say one needs to focus on, and there's more of those, but those would be the top KPIs I would recommend.
What do you think is the importance of the sales forecasting? Because I don't think a lot of people listening or watching that are doing that. Be honest with you, I don't even think they know how to do that. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Like, why is sales forecasting so important?
It's a great question, right? So if you think of the funnel, right, the sales forecast is sort of the lifeline of a company. You're trying to understand what is my, what we people call bookings forecast, or what is the value of a deal or an opportunity you're bringing in. And the process of sales forecasting is, how do I stack that up across my sales team, have the sales leader or a manager put a judgment, because, there's human nature involved where you'll have some reps that are forecasting too aggressively. Some of them are very conservative. So understanding that buildup of what are the deals in the pipeline I'm going to book is really important, right? Because that's the foundation of the new business I'm going to get in the company. And that translates into revenue when I build those customers. And that's really the foundation. So understanding that sales forecast is a little bit of art and science, because there's people involved, but then there's a lot of metrics, KPIs, conversational intelligence, which can help you really judge if the forecast is good or bad, right? And that's that process of making sure you hold your reps accountable, the managers accountable, and at the very top, the leadership accountable for the numbers that they are calling for new business bookings that they're going to be doing.
So let me ask you this. That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate the insight, because that gives us an idea of the value of it. And again, I think a lot of people aren't doing it. And it's interesting because I see the problems they have as a result of that, right? The revenue's down the month. They didn't expect it. They didn't anticipate. They don't have any leading indicators. They don't have any forecasting to know. And all they're doing is reacting to what's going on instead of properly preparing, right? And I've learned this in the early days of my business, that if I know I'm going to have a slow month, then I can do promotions and stuff in the beginning of that month to avoid it. So there's all kinds of things you could do to avoid problems before they occur if you have this forecasting. So now the question is how do we do this? Like, what's the best way to predict or build out a forecast? Because when people just try to assume and don't use any kind of tech or analytics behind it, I don't believe that probably to be very accurate forecast. So how do we build out a sales forecast the right way where it's accurate and really an accurate depiction of what we anticipate will happen the next month, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So the way we go about building a true sales forecast, in my view, is we need to start with the deals in the pipeline, right? It probably starts with the CRM hygiene, right? You want to make sure that your reps are putting in the deals and they're progressing them. So every CRM has certain stages or gates through which a deal progresses. So making sure that there's a good hygiene of people entering the data, people making sure that the sales reps are focused on saying this deal has moved from one stage to another, right? Now, how technology can help is this is where AI comes in, right? And we can start saying that, hey, this deal has been sitting in this stage for way too long compared to other similar deals, right? So that becomes a sort of a nudge to the sales rep to say, either you've not updated it or you're not having the right conversations. The second thing I would say is, again, the whole notion of conversational intelligence, right? As we are thinking of a deal, it's interaction with the customers in digital ways. So you're sending out emails, you're having a Zoom call or a conference call, you're sending the marketing assets. Collecting all of this intelligence is sort of giving you a independent view of how engaged is your buyer, right? And understanding that with AI helps you predict not only a self-assessment of where the rep thinks they are going to be, but an independent AI assessment of what is the probability or likelihood to close this deal. So that's the first thing to do. And then AI can also tell you, if the deal is stalled, what can I do to really course correct, right? So that's the second signal, I would say, in terms of understanding that deal. So once you have the reps putting in the data in the right system and making sure the hygiene is there, then we start looking at how do we start stacking all of this data together, right? And that's again where you want a tool where it shows you, okay, this is the value of all the opportunities I have in my pipeline. And then you sort of can codify them into stages, right? A lot of companies use what we call commit, best case, and pipeline, right? And a lot of times people are focused on commits. Commit is really, I as a sales rep within this particular quarter, I'm saying, these are the 5 deals that I feel really confident I'm going to win. And that's how you stack up all your commit forecasts. You then put a manager judgment where the manager comes and reviews all the deals they have in the pipeline. And that's again where AI can help you say, typically this rep is missing his forecast by 10%. So if he's given me a forecast, I need to take it down by 10%, right? So this is again where AI can start telling you based on the forecast accuracy of the previous forecast, how accurate is this rep? So you roll up all of that data, and that's when you start looking at a leadership level and you say, based on historical patterns, based on the conversational intelligence, based on the deals in the pipeline, with a good level of deal inspection, this is the forecast I want to call out. And it's not a one-time activity, right? So deals are changing, right? Business is changing. So one of the things we advise our clients to do is look at this on a periodic basis and start seeing what has changed from the last forecast, right? What can I do better? So that's some of the things that we advise our clients to do, is to put a process with the technology so you're evaluating this on a methodical basis.
So if we look at next quarter, what do you guys do? Where you fit into this process? Like, for example, do you guys help with the machine learning AI aspect to be able to get better ideas of sales forecasting? Or like, what does your tech do to help in this process?
Yeah, so next quarter's platform really helps sales reps identify from a revenue intelligence perspective. It shows you that progression of forecast. So with our UI, you can start saying, okay, I'm the chief revenue officer and I'm looking at my West region. What are the reps in the region committing to, right? So we help them first to collate that data point. And there's 2 points of view we give, right? One is, what are the reps saying, right? In terms of what deals they have in the pipeline, what are they going to close? The second thing we do is we come up with our own AI and we snapshot the data on a week-to-week basis. So if you have 13 weeks in the quarter, we can start showing the movement of the forecast week on week. And using AI, we can call a number that we expect the sales team to hit. And that kind of gives a visualization of, this is where the reps are going to come in. This is where the AI is going to tell you where we may end up. And then looking at that data from a week-to-week basis will give you a good level of indication if you're going to meet the projections that you've given or not. Now, that's kind of the main thing that the tool does. Well, within that, we help you identify what we call an engagement score, right? So that's how engaged am I with a particular customer at a deal level. So we can start looking at these engagement metrics, and we can start, coaching the sales leaders to say, hey, here are some deals where the rep is saying, I'm going to close these deals. But the engagement score, which is a proxy of all the activity that has happened for that deal based on conversations, may show that, this client is not engaged. So there's a good chance to now help the leaders inspect the pipeline and start saying, these deals may not close because the engagement score is low and we don't think it's going to close in the quarter. And that becomes a coaching moment, right, for the reps. The third thing we do is we collect a lot of KPIs, right? So every sales leader thinks of different KPIs. Some people want to see there's the average deals, the deal is staying in a particular state. Some people want to look at the win rate. So what's flexible with our platform is, for a sales leader, for a sales manager, for a sales executive, we're able to show all of these KPIs that may be customized to that user or to that leader, so they can get a 360 view of the revenue and the movements from the last forecast to the current forecast.
So do you integrate with certain sales platforms?
Yes, so we are integrated with Salesforce, which is the #1 CRM platform. And what we leverage is all the integrations that can happen. So the beauty of our technology is we are within the CRM. What we found with salespeople is the swivel chair effect, right? So if you ask salespeople to go into different systems, they ain't gonna do it, because there's a lot of times you see salespeople are not even entering data in the CRM. So what we've done with our technology is we've brought it to the Salesforce platform. It's an easy way for reps without any data entry to start visualizing the forecast, visualizing the KPIs, the engagement score. And that's how we also then integrate with any technology. Normally, the CRM is connected to different technologies. It could be the conversational platforms, marketing platforms, customer success, and we can pull all of the KPIs into this platform within Salesforce and show it to the sales users and sales managers.
When you are bringing, these projections or to a CEO, is there a right way to do it? Is there a better way that a sales manager or sales team member should be bringing the forecasts to the CEO?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So there's absolutely a lot of ways in which we recommend our customers or the chief revenue officers tell the story to the CEO. So what we recommend is to start with showing that there's confidence in the forecast, right? And the way you show that is to show the analytics, which will suggest that, hey, we have a strong foundation that we're building on. For instance, a great example is our win rates have not changed in the past couple of months. Based on the win rates, this is the pipeline coverage we have, and we expect to see some of these deals fall out, but we have enough coverage where we can backfill some of the deals. So giving that confidence beyond just saying this is the roll-up of the numbers is really important when you're having the C-suite conversation. The second thing we say is, although you want to call a sort of a commit number or the forecast that you project, it's always good to give more than one scenario to the CEO, right? And that's where you say, okay, look, the market right now, we think this is where we are going to land, but this is the worst case scenario if things don't go well. And this is the best case scenario. Again, it can be a huge range, but giving that confidence that the forecast was data backed, it's backed by AI machine learning algorithms, and presenting the scenarios is a good way to tell the story to the CEO.
I love that. What about, and we going back a little bit, you had mentioned, different stages of an actual sales pipeline, right? And again, I don't even think a lot of people that are newer stage in businesses, at least, don't have that part figured out, where they have their kind of pipeline broke down into these stages. So what are some of the best tips that you found on your end that you can actually kind of like streamline the sales process to make it easier to actually hit those sales forecasts?
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? So what we would recommend to people is understand the business, right? So understand really the buying process of your clients, and make sure that one, you don't have too many stages, because then you're putting in more gates that are introduced. But two, also you don't have too few stages. So link it to your customers' outcomes, right? The customer's buying journey is really important for you to understand, and mapping that to how you are selling into them. The second thing I would say is make sure that the guidelines for those stages are very well understood. A lot of times we see there's some subjective judgment in, should I put this in negotiation stage or contracting, right? So making sure there's clear guidelines for each of those stages is important. And then the third aspect is training, right? And giving some real life examples to your sales team so they exactly understand, with a real case study, where would you put this sales stage, right? Is it stage A or stage B? So those are some of the things that we would recommend our customers to do. And evaluate this periodically, right? We're not saying it's going to be perfect the first time, but give it enough time to play out and see if there is a periodic reevaluation, if the customer's life cycle has changed or our sales motion has changed, right? Now we do more qualification. So those are some of the ways we look at it. The second thing we recommend is to augment it with a sales methodology, right? So there's a lot of sales methodologies like MEDPIC, Challenger, BAND. In every organization, there's no right or wrong methodology. But once you embrace that methodology, methodology is a set of questions that you ask before you progress from one stage to another. And that creates consistency within the organization in terms of understanding and being very prescriptive about, I do these 5 actions in stage 1, then I move to stage 2. So those are some of the things we would recommend.
Along that point, and I love those recommendations. A buddy of mine wrote a book on how your business is a leaky bucket and all the ways to be able to maximize revenue and profit. And one of the things he briefly talked about in there was a revenue leakage. Can you give us some insight? Because this is your field of expertise. What is revenue leakage, and what are some of the most common things that cause it to happen?
Yeah, so revenue leakage is, when you're in a market and you're selling your goods or services, and let's say you've got an order right in hand, but you didn't have a proactive way of communicating that to your delivery teams or other teams in the company. So now you have an order that you cannot fulfill. And that's simply what revenue leakage is. And this is a big problem in the industry. And that's why that whole forecasting ecosystem needs to be kind of tightly communicated with your delivery sort of executives. And, if you're a manufacturing company, with supply chain. We have some clients where, with the pandemic, they had this huge flow of orders, right? But they did not really enhance their supply chains at the same level. So you had customers who were saying, I want your product, but I'm not able to fulfill it from a delivery perspective. And that leaves a bad taste in the customer's mouth. And that is revenue that you're leaving on the table. And this happens in a lot of industries. And the way to rectify it is really to make sure that your sales forecasting process is then going to the downstream delivery organization or manufacturing or supply chain, so they get enough visibility so they can plan their lead times to get the products or services available on time.
What are some other ways that maybe we haven't talked about today that we can use revenue intelligence to drive more top-end revenue to the business?
So one of the big ways, again, I talk about it is, using intent data. So what's happened now is there's a lot of signals in the marketplace that you can now find out to see if there is a need for your product, right? So the typical sales motion, and we've seen a large client do this, right, is they have these huge customers, they're selling 2 or 3 services, they're very good at it, right? And they just continue to focus on that. But what's happening is that same customer that they're servicing has a need for one of your products, which you're not aware of because you probably don't have the relationship with some of the other departments that are selling it. And that's where what we have also done is we call it intent, right? So now with some of the AI and tools, we can say, okay, there's a third product that I've not sold to this customer. And now when the customer is researching the internet for certain keywords that reflect that product, or they're looking at your competitors, we can now start pulling those intent signals. And those intent signals are proactive ways of surfacing, saying, hey, there's the product that we have in our kit that the customer is looking for. And this is through, searches on the internet. And now there's an intent to sell this. We can then say, based on the intent, are we really good at selling the service to similar clients? So we come up with what we call an NQ score, which is looking at the intent for certain products you haven't sold. And then it's also looking at how good am I at selling those products to similar customers. And that then becomes a proactive way in which your sales executives can have a conversation to really surface some of those opportunities. And those are the best opportunities because typically when the customer's already put an RFP out there, a request for proposal, it's too late. They've already said there's going to be 3 vendors and then you're fighting for that business. But if you were to use the intent and proactively build a proposal, your chances of succeeding are much higher. And that's what we call soft pipeline that you can create through things like intent.
Well, a powerful discussion today. I mean, increasing top line revenue is really important. And I love the idea of everything you said, from revenue intelligence to using machine learning to using AI to really be able to create forecasts to get a better idea of what's going on, and then making those forecasts more reliable as we get more data. Anybody that's watching, listening, that's interested in diving in deeper, seeing how this can help their organization, what steps should they take?
So I would say that, check out our website. It's nextq.ai. We have a lot of case studies, white papers we put out there based on our thinking of what people should be doing. Especially in this environment where we're coming up with a recession, forecasting is probably the most important thing that you want to focus on. So check out our website, check out this podcast, and some of the white papers and thought leadership we have on this area.
I love it. Rahul, thanks for coming in with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you, Ty.
So listen, if you're watching and listening to this, this is probably one of the most important things in your organization. I mean, the 2 things you really need to care about maybe the most are the top line revenue and the profit of the money that you're keeping. And the bottom line is the profit's going to be better if you better manage the revenue, right? I mean, as we've talked about today, if you're missing all kinds of sales opportunities and you're paying money to bring those people and drive those people into the organization, then it's going to hurt your bottom line pretty significantly. But the better you could manage what's happening on top line revenue, the greater your revenue intelligence is, then the more likely it is that your profits are going to be higher as a result. So the bottom line is, if you want the company to make more, to pay you, and to have more money to reinvest in the business growth, you have to get this figured out. And I bet if you're watching this, you probably don't have a good forecast. You probably don't have good sales forecast. You might not have even thought about it before you stepped in here to listen to this today. So this is something you really need to know. If you're just reacting and one day you have a good month and one month you have a bad month and you don't even know what's driving it, well, this is even more indication that you really need to come in and get better sales intelligence. So what you should do is make sure you go to nextq.ai. Rahul, is that the best place for them to go?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. So nextq.ai. And if you go to nextq.ai, there's just a lot of great information here. They have a phenomenal blog with all kinds of information that can help you, and a lot of resources and information that will just help you focus on growth. That will help you focus on revenue intelligence. That will help you get clarity on the financial side. Anybody that's helping you, from accountants to CFOs, are going to thank you endlessly for what you're doing. It's just something that's essential to stop revenue leakage and to make sure that you're actually keeping more of the money there that's potentially there to be earned. So make sure you check out nextq.ai so you can dive in, get the right revenue intelligence for your business, get the right sales forecasting for your business to prevent revenue leakage and to be able to make this next year the best year ever in both top line and bottom line as well.